Everybody, and welcome to the Global Awareness Report for the 29th of July. I'm fairly certain it's the 29th. I can never remember what day it is. It's weird, isn't it? But anyways, we are back here. If you haven't seen the first episode, then welcome new time viewers, and if you're a returning viewer, then welcome back. We have a lot of geopolitical updates. Not so many updates on the Ukraine war front, but we do have quite a bit of geopolitical updates. But we're going to start with Ukraine first of all. There's no real news in the northern front. There have been fighting. There's been a lot of fighting along this front, but no real frontline changes. And we have again not a lot of fighting along the northern front here. I've gotten rid of the Russian claimed maps because or markers because I don't think that map is even meant to show the Russian front line. I think it's just more of a sort of a placeholder. I think it was probably an older map or a purposefully incorrect map. So I'm not going to use it as a source for any front line changes because I don't think it's fairly accurate at all. Quick update. The Ukrainians actually control this forest near Dolina Krasnopolina. Uh, Around this, I'm fairly certain. Most maps and most sources say that the Ukrainians control this forest here, that they have troops in this forest. So I'm going to give it under their control. I'm going to mark it as under Ukrainian control. These towns, there's still no updates on these towns. Pretty much every single Western source says that these two towns are under Ukrainian control, and pretty much every Russian source say that they're under Russian control. So it is pretty much impossible to know at this point. So this front is a bit slow. There hasn't been much on the Siversk front. It's been slow, but that's how the Russians operate now: is slow advances and artillery barrage the enemy positions and then slowly advance and clear them out. That's how the Russians operate. Although there has been reports that along these heights right here that there have been Russian forces and Russian forces have advanced to these heights. I don't think they've captured the territory. I think it's maybe a scouting force, a probing force. I don't think they've advanced to this territory, so I'm not going to mark this as Russian controlled. I'm just going to mark this as a Russian advance. Down to the south here, I believe this was the Russians have captured this town. I believe that was in the last report. But if not, then the Russians have captured this town right here. It's very small. Some towns have said that Belogorivka, not this Belogorivka up here, but this one down here is under Russian control. Some maps show, but there hasn't been enough evidence to suggest that this town is under Russian control. Moving down the front here near Solidar, we have Russian forces have reported that they have entered this sort of suburb of Solidar, Bakhmutske. Donetsk forces. Actually, it might have even been Luhansk militia forces down here, but anyways. There's been reported fighting in this town right here. The Russians have not captured it, but the Russians are advancing. The Russians and Russian forces, Russian allied forces, are advancing. I think I'm just going to call Donetsk and Luhansk Russian forces because they are ethnically Russian, so, and they speak Russian, so I'm just going to call them Russian forces. Further to the south, the town of Prokofske, the southern part of the town was captured a little bit before the northern part here on July 26th. The Russians have captured the entire town of Pokrovsky, which is a pretty big setback for the defense of Bakhmut. Now the Russians have. There is no real town. There is no major fortifications, no major ways to halt the Russian advance. So the Russians have a direct line towards Bakhmut. They aren't going to assault the town from this position because it's not very viable. But the Russians are advancing towards Visherne, I believe. I believe it's how you pronounce it. It's a very weird name. So, but the Russians have advanced towards this town. Some sources say that they have captured it. I don't think that they've captured it, but they have advanced in this direction, and they have captured probably the far eastern parts of the town right here. I believe are under Russian control, and but not the whole town. So I don't think the whole town is under Russian control. So we're gonna leave it like this. It may be, but we're gonna leave it like this for now. And major news from the south of the Bakhmut front: the Vol Volodyarsk power station on July 25th was captured by Russian forces, as well as Novo on the same day was also captured by Russian forces. So this was a major defensive line, as we talked about in the last report. Ukrainians were sending a lot of their some of their best troops that they had, the mechanized brigades, to this area, try and reinforce and defend it, and they withdrew. The Russians pushed them out, and now they have captured this area. And as well, there are reports of them advancing towards this town right here, this area. Semihirja, I think. Semihirya. I'm not sure why there are two names for a town that's basically one, but it is what it is, I suppose. So this area right here, this town, the Russians have advanced and are attacking from pretty much these two fronts here. I'm not sure if there are any. There are trenches right here and here, so there probably are. There's probably Ukrainian defense along this line, but they're probably trying to evacuate and retreat and hold the line. I've moved the this Ukrainian forces line down here to this defensive line because I believe that there are one of the volunteer corps was moved down here to this area to defend it. So we are going to see a Ukrainian defense of the south of Bakhmut, and the Russians are slowly advancing towards Bakhmut. I'm not sure what their plan is to deal with the city, if they're going to do what they did with Lysychansk and leave a golden corridor, a escape route so that Ukrainian forces can just leave the city and retreat from the city so that the Russians don't have to fight it. Because if the Russians encircle the city, then they're going to have to fight block by block for pretty much everything like they did in Mariupol. And the Russians don't want another Mariupol. Mariupol took too much time. It was a Russian victory, and it was a pretty decisive Russian victory, but it took a long time. And the Russians want to capture as much of Donbass as possible before, probably before the winter, I would say. Even though winter is not that big of a deal when it comes to modern warfare, it's not. It doesn't play as decisive as a role as it used to compared to pre-World War and stuff like that. So the Russians could still make advances during the winter. They did in February. There was snow, and the Russians made quite a lot of advances. So, but it would be best if they could capture as much as possible before the winter, because it's still an annoyance. It's still frustrating for the military to advance during the winter. and they will suffer more attrition because of the cold. So moving down to the Horivka front, the Ukrainians have captured Shumi, or they were never, or Shumi was never taken by the Russians in the first place. I'm not sure, but I'm going to mark it as under Ukrainian control. So I'm going to remove the Russians from this town here. So moving on, there has been a lot of there's been a lot of advances, a lot of Russian fighting, or I should say fighting, just fighting along the front line. There is a big offensive going on along the entire front line. So we will see. We'll know which ones, which offensives succeed and which fail, based on what they've captured, based on reports on which towns have fallen. So we're going to see. This appears to be maybe not the main Russian offensive, because I think the Russians would try to take Totorsk, Tororsk, something like that, and New York. Down here, I think the Russians would try to assault these positions if it was a fully fledged offensive, although maybe not. I don't know the Russian plan, of course, so we can only speculate. But we're going to move on. It would appear that the Russians have captured the town of Novo down here near Orkiv. So this is a town really close to the city. It's a good position to hold if you want to eventually take the town. And I believe that the Russians will most likely try to take Zaporizhia, or at least, get to the outskirts of the city, because it's quite a big town, and it has a major industrial plant, as you can see right here. Although actually taking the city would take a long time, and I'm not sure if the Russians want to even push this far. I'm not even sure if that's in their plan, is to push this far up to the Dnieper. So, but I think that they're going to take more of Zaporozhye Oblast. I don't think they're going to leave the front line here. I think they'll push. I'm not sure if they'll take the city though. I really don't think that they will. Moving over to the Kherson front, the Russian forces have, or the Ukrainian forces have captured Andriivka and Beloharka. So the Kherson offensive is starting to begin. It looks like. It looks like the Ukrainians are making offensive attacks across the this river right here, and are trying to cross the river, establish bridgeheads across the river, and move their mechanized forces here. You can see there's a lot of mechanized and marine brigades and motorized brigades all along this front here. So, and of course, we talked about in the last episode how the Ukrainians say that they're gonna strike this area of the front line and try to push the Russians back over the Dnieper. And speaking of which, this bridge right here across the Dnieper has been a part of it around here, around where that X is, has been destroyed and is no longer operational, and the Russians are no longer using it, which is a fairly major blow to the Russians, I would say, as this is the main and shortest supply line to the front here. The Russians do have supply lines across this dam right here. They can send trucks, and there's a road across this dam, and that dam isn't going to go anytime soon. That's not going to be destroyed anytime soon. It is, and even if it were, it would cause so much damage to the surrounding civilian areas. I think I've heard that the Ukrainians have tried to destroy it. They did hit the dam, but I don't think they were trying to destroy the dam itself. I think they were trying to damage the road on top of the dam. So I don't think the Ukrainians are going to try to flood this area. The Russians are building pontoon bridges, but it's quite a large gap here. It's about half a mile at what appears to be sort of the narrowest point. So there is also a bridge here, but I'm not sure if this is a railway bridge or not. I think it's a road bridge, but there is a bridge right here, I believe, that is a road bridge, and there's also a bridge over here, but this bridge is not as big, and this bridge is very far away. See the major highway right here. It has to go a lot, a lot longer to get to the western part of the front here, and so the western part of the front is in a much lower supply, as well as sort of the middle, the center right here. The eastern part is fine because they were using this bridge to supply the eastern front anyways. The eastern part of the front line. So this is a pretty big deal. This was destroyed using HIMARS, of course. The HIMARS are very good. They're very good. I'm quite impressed that I'm quite honestly shocked that I've never heard of such an effective you know artillery system before, multi-launch rocket system. Before they announced that they were sending them over. So I believe that that's all for the Ukraine front. Not a There were some these are pretty major developments, but not a whole lot of territory captured. But we have quite a big. I wouldn't say strategic. I suppose isn't the right word, but it's a big deal. This bridge being gone, but we'll have to see if the Russians can prepare it in time. Well, not. I suppose that's not the right way to say it. We can see. Let's see how long it takes the Russians to repair it. It's concrete, and concrete takes a while to dry, so it's going to be a while before that bridge is back up. So that's a pretty major Ukrainian win. But we'll see if the Ukrainians have the ability to take Kherson back. I honestly don't think so, but I could very well be wrong. And I believe that's it for the Ukrainian analysis part of the episode here. Let's move on to some headlines. We have Sergei Lavrov, I believe, said that the overarching goal in Ukraine is to quote unquote free its people from its unacceptable regime. So this remark comes from Sergei Lavrov. I I don't think those are the actual reasons, but it is an interesting statement. I don't think I don't think that's the actual main reason. I believe that that was one of the initial goals with the offensive towards Kiev, towards the capital city here. That was probably the initial goal, was to try to decapitate the leadership, not literally, but not literally, but to that's a military term, is to decapitate leadership, is to basically strike the leadership and take them out. Not necessarily kill them or literally decapitate them, but to take them out, to capture them, capture kill the leadership. So I believe that was the initial Russian plan. One of the initial Russian plans. I think Russia had multiple ideas of what they were going to go for. So they were going to try to see if they could take Kiev/Kiev. I don't know really what to call it. I'll just say Kiev for now. That way, no one gets offended. The Russians, you can't get offended by me calling it both. Okay, you can't get offended at me. So I don't want to see anyone complaining in the comment section about it. Okay, but that was one of their initial goals, and I think another one of their goals was to actually just sort of take the southern part of the country in the first phases of the operation. And it did really seem like the Russians were aiming on taking out the leadership seeing if that worked, and if that didn't work, go to plan B, which is just to fight an actual war. So in my opinion, this was the initial aim, but after that didn't work, I believe the Russians just said, okay, well, we'll just fight an actual war. Which I think the Russians were somewhat prepared to do. A lot of people say the Russians had no idea what they were doing. They were completely unprepared. I don't think that's the case. I think Russia has a capable modern military force, and so does Ukraine, although to a lesser extent, quite a far lesser extent. But I think Ukraine also has a capable military force. But I think the Russians have managed to deal enough damage to the point where the Ukrainians are having trouble defending and have trouble going on the offensive. So anyway, we're going to move on to this article right here, which Gazprom from the 27th of July, so 2 days ago, I believe, is to cut Nord Stream 1 gas supplies to 330, oh, I forget, a million cubic meters. Thankfully, it's right here. So it usually is 160 million cubic meters, or that's its full capacity. More than 160 million cubic meters per day. This is a Nord Stream 1 right here. You can see this white line. It runs from Viborg, Viborg, I think. Viborg, and it runs to this station right here near Greifswald, and it comes off here and it connects to Britain, and it connects down here into France and down into Austria and through Czechia. And the Russians are going to cut that to, I should say why. They say it's because of maintenance. The European Union is claiming that it's not because of maintenance, but but the Russians are trying to blackmail the Europeans, and they're trying to, pressure the Europeans into lifting some of the sanctions and being less harsh on Russia. That's what the European Union claims. I think though that it kind of is maintenance, because there was a kind of a big deal where there was a turbine on the German side of Nord Stream. There was a gas turbine that was sent to Canada for maintenance. I believe it was sent to Montreal. And the Canadians wouldn't allow it to be sent back. And so I think the Germans said, well, we'll send it. I think they had a third party transported to Germany, so technically it didn't break the sanctions. And so it's back on the German side. And so now the Russians are doing their end of the maintenance. I think that's what's happening right now. I don't think this is intentional. I don't think that this is any kind of blackmail. Although it very well could be. Although I really doubt it. There's a small possibility that it is. It might serve a dual purpose. It might be for maintenance, and the Russians might be able to exploit that and, maybe get a little bit of concessions out of the European Union. I think that's probably the most likely scenario here. And speaking of sanctions, the first Russian train reaches Kaliningrad since the EU decision to allow goods to be transferred through the rail line through Lithuania. This isn't a rail line, this is a gas pipeline. This white thing right here, by the way, this isn't the rail line. So the Lithuanians had blocked all transport through Russian rail transit through Lithuania. I believe around July 14th, around then, sort of in mid-July, and I think maybe even back in June. But the the European Union said, nope, you have to allow Russian goods to be transported. You have to allow these, supplies to be transported. So Lithuania kind of caved in and said, all right, fine. Let's see here. the first since to allow, yeah, it was carrying cement. The regional governor said that it is quite an important achievement. So that's good for the people of Kaliningrad. A lot of the time, you'll see these discussions and you'll see these people talk. I'm talking about these sort of politicians and stuff, and it's like they'll talk about how we need to hurt Russia, but hurting Russia does mean hurting the people of Russia, and not everybody is in favor of the war. Most people in Russia are in favor of the war, but there are a lot of people who aren't, and there are people who just need to get on with their daily lives, and they need to they need to survive too. They're not exactly in charge of whether or not the country's at war or not. So there is, I do think that when making geopolitical analysis, you should try to be objective as possible and try to not really say who's good, who's right, and who's wrong. And I don't do that. I'm not saying that anyone's right or wrong. I think this is just the way that it is. But it is always nice to see that the regular people are not doing too bad, at least in Russia. And it's sad to see, the people in Ukraine doing bad, but at least the Russians are doing okay. At least the Russian people are doing okay. That's what I meant by that. So I believe that's sort of all for Europe. Moving on to the Middle East here, I added sort of the factions in the Syrian civil war, and I added Kurdistan and all this stuff. So this should give some more context as to what the situation is here. The purple represents Turkish controlled, essentially Turkish controlled, and the yellows the Kurds. And you can go to the map, which is linked in the description. You can read the Wikipedia for these groups and stuff. It's quite interesting. But there's no real new updates here aside from there was some shelling of Turkish positions in Syria by the Kurds and the Syrian government, and the Turk and Turkish-backed rebels fired back. So since the bombing of or shelling, I suppose, of the resort, not a whole lot has happened. So I'll continue to sort of monitor this area and see if there's any new news. Moving on to Africa, there's actually some quite interesting news coming out of Africa here. Sergei Lavrov on the 24th of July, so I think that's like a day after the first episode went up. Visited Egypt and a ton of other, well, not a ton, but he visited Egypt, and he's also visited Ethiopia, Uganda, and the Democratic Republic of the Congo. I think he's finished up with his trip by now. I'm not sure though. He could still be in Africa at this point. But this is interesting because as well, Emmanuel Macron here visited a lot of African countries like Benin and Cameroon, and I believe Cameroon, then Benin, then ending with Guyana-Bissau. I'm sort of ashamed to admit this, but I actually don't know where that is. I think it's in West Africa. Oh, right here, right here. You'll see he finished this trip right here this trip started on the 26th of July. And as well, the the United States' UN ambassador also visited Africa. I'm not sure which countries here. This is quite a long article, so I didn't read all of it. But so three very high level. I mean, in the case of France, I think president is the highest office in France. So the president of France and the official secretary for foreign policy in Russia, the official What's his exact title again? Russian foreign minister. So the foreign minister of Russia, the president of France, and the UN ambassador from the United States are all visited Africa this past week, which is very interesting. It's very interesting. This region of the world doesn't get a lot of attention, but it should because it's quite important. I believe we went over that he visited Uganda. Yes, which has always been pro-U.S. It's always really been a pro-Western kind of pro-American country. So it's interesting to see that the foreign minister of Russia visiting the country. So shifting tides in Africa, shifting geopolitical positions, maybe. We'll have to see. But I think that this is very interesting how a lot of these, how there's so many, how some of the most powerful countries in the world are having people sent to Africa. Even the president of France himself, I mean, France has always had interests in Africa. France still has a lot of influence in West Africa. A lot of influence. I'm not going to go over all of it here, but you should really look up French influence in Africa. It's very interesting. There's a lot of it, a lot of influence. So I think we're going to move over to the United States here. We're going to go over these headlines right here. Speaking of trips, Antony Blinken, the Secretary of State, is off to Asia and Africa. He's going on a tour here that will start in Cambodia, I believe. I believe he's going to head to Cambodia first. Let me read here. Again, these are very long articles, so. And I just put this on the map like a few minutes before I started recording, so I haven't had the chance to read it. But it says here that he will, yes, right here, he will visit Cambodia, where the Southeast Asian Regional Security Forum is taking place, as well as the Russian and Chinese foreign ministers are also expected to attend this forum. So then he'll move over to the Philippines, and then he's going to go to South Africa, and then the Democratic Republic of the Congo, and then Rwanda. So Cambodia is a pretty strong ally of China, so it's interesting to see him visit this country. Although this is for a regional forum, so I'm not sure how much he'll talk with the Cambodian leadership. But heading to the Philippines is interesting because the Philippines is sort of split in between China and the United States. It's very reliant on China for the economy. It has a lot of economic deals with China. It's been moving closer to China in recent years, but it still allows the United States to have a military presence in the Philippines, such as air bases and whatnot. So it's kind of right in between China and the United States. So it is interesting to see him visit that. South Africa has been moving away from the United States and moving closer to Russia and China in recent years. So, as well as the Democratic Republic of the Congo is, I believe, still there's a lot of instability in this country, and it's a very poor part of the world, but it's very rich in mineral resources. So that's probably the reason why he's visiting, is because it's so rich in natural resources and rare earth minerals that is sort of necessary for modern technology to function, I believe. And Rwanda has a booming economy right now. It is a very, very prosperous country because of their president that's been in power since 2017, I believe. He's renewed the country, and it's on a very, very good path. It's on a very upward trajectory. So it's kind of the new regional player almost, I want to say. So he's visiting quite a lot of important countries in Africa, Antony Blinken, and as well as the United States' UN ambassador, Macron, Lavrov. So A lot's going on in Africa right now. We are going to move on over here. So, on July the 28th, the United States votes to advance a really big semiconductor industry bill. So this is from the Associated Press. A bill designed to encourage more semiconductor companies to build chip plants in the United States passed the Senate on Wednesday as lawmakers race to finish work on key priority of the Biden administration. The $280 billion measure, which awaits a House vote, includes federal grants and tax breaks for companies that construct their chip facilities in the United States. The legislation also directs Congress to significantly increase spending on high tech research programs that lawmakers say will help the country stay economically competitive in the decades ahead. So that is pretty big. That's a lot of money, and I think it takes a long time to build up a semiconductor industry. It takes a long time to build up these sort of plants and facilities. But it can be done, especially by the United States, which is probably the leading country in terms of technology and technological development. As most of you probably know, the United States is reliant on semiconductor production from Taiwan, which is the world's leading country in terms of semiconductor production. And Taiwan is, of course, right next to China, and it's in the Chinese crosshairs. So America wants to be self-sufficient. America is moving away from Chinese dependency, as well as China is moving away from American dependency. These two countries' economies are sort of interdependent on each other. So the United States is doing what it should do if it wants to remain competitive in the world and it wants to fight China, which is to become economically self-sufficient as it can. So this is a interesting development. We're seeing big changes in the way America thinks about this region of the world, about the Indo-Pacific region. We've seen it since 2014, since the Obama administration. It really ramped up under Trump, and now Biden is continuing down the path of becoming more competitive with China and becoming more adversarial towards China as a response to growing Chinese power and economic prowess. And there is a bill right here. So, with the semiconductor bill passing on the 28th of July, Biden and Xi Jinping talked for more than 2 hours in a virtual call, in a virtual meeting. Speaking more for 2 hours, they chart the future of their complicated relationship at a time of simmering economic and geopolitical tensions. The call began at 8:33 a.m. and it ended at 8:50 a.m. According to the White House, it took place as Biden aims to find new ways to work with the rising global power as well as strategies to contain China's influence around the world. Different perspectives on global health, economic policy, and human rights have long tested the relationship with China's refusal to condemn Russia's invasion of Ukraine, as well as adding further strain. The two heads of state had in-depth communication and exchanges on U.S.-China relations and issues of mutual concern. China's Central Television reported on its website. So, I think this is the fifth or fourth time Biden has talked with Xi Jinping. That Xi Jinping and Biden have talked with each other. So last time I believe was in May that they talked to each other. So a lot of high-level negotiations and high-level talks and meetings are going on around in Africa and in Asia. So it's all very interesting. I'm not entirely sure what to make of it all because I think we're going to see a renewed interest in Africa because of the because of the looming global food crisis, alleged global food crisis. We don't know if there will be one until there is one, unfortunately, but a lot of people are predicting that there will be one, and I believe that there will be quite a few problems caused by the war in Ukraine. So that's most likely what this is about. That meeting also probably had to do with American, the semiconductor bill and Blinken's visit to East Asia, as well. It probably they most definitely discussed the assassination of Shinzo Abe, which is a very important development that has also raised world tension quite a lot. So we're seeing a global rise in tension, and we are seeing these countries move further away from this sort of globalized economic system, the globalization, global economic trade. We're seeing these countries move away from and trying to become more self-reliant and less interconnected on each other, interdependent with each other. I believe we have one last headline, which is that the United States is to sell 20 million barrels of oil from the strategic reserve. The Biden administration announced on Tuesday that it said that it will sell an additional 20 million barrels of oil from the strategic petroleum reserve as part of a previous plan to tap the facility to calm oil prices boosted by Russia's invasion of Ukraine. And I'm going to have to say, but as well as the Biden administration's own policies, because gas and oil prices were rising before the invasion, and I think a lot of it has to do with the Biden administration's environmental policies, with them sort of trying to shut down any new fracking and oil wells being built, and not allowing new pipelines to be built. Which I'm not saying is a good or bad thing, but I am saying that that has definitely had an effect. And it's not just the Russian invasion of Ukraine. It's most certainly not. So you can read the whole. I suppose you can pause the video and read the whole article, or you could or you could go to the map in the description and read the article yourself. Whichever one suits you best. So I think, if I am not mistaken, that is everything. Updates to the map. I've added control. I've added which countries control the Spratly Islands. The purple is Vietnam. The sort of the teal is the Philippines. The brown is Malaysia. And the red is China. And the dark blue right here is Taiwan. And Taiwan also controls this right next to the Chinese mainland, as well as this island right here. And China, of course, controls the parcels. And so, I'm just adding more and more. I'm trying to make this as global as possible to try to get a better understanding of the geopolitical situation. More and more stuff as globally as possible. So I believe that's it. I believe that's everything. I don't think there's really anything else to cover. So thank you for watching. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. If you have anything to say, please leave it in the comments. It'll help more people see the video. And yeah, I hope you've enjoyed. I hope you found this informative. And I suppose that's all I have to say. So I'll see you next week. I'm going to try to do this weekly. So I'll see you in the next week. See you in the next Global Awareness Support. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.